The amber glow of the setting sun sliced through the blinds, casting long, fractured shadows across the quiet living room. On opposite ends of the worn leather couch, Leo and Elena sat in a heavy, suffocating silence. The physical 3 feet of space between them felt like a canyon, a stark visual representation of the emotional chasm that had been widening for months. Lately, every single conversation about their future felt like stepping onto a minefield. If they discussed where to buy a house, it spiraled into an argument about obligation. If they talked about where to spend the upcoming holidays, it devolved into cold shoulders and slammed doors. They weren't just clashing over calendar dates, plane tickets, or logistical plans. They were warring over a subterranean current of tension that neither of them could quite name or articulate. Every word was a trap. Every sigh was weaponized. They were exhausted, drained by the constant friction of two futures pulling in completely opposite directions. Eleanor took a slow, grounding breath, her shoulders rising and falling heavily as she turned her body to face him. "Leo, look at us. We can't keep doing this," she said, her voice barely louder than the hum of the refrigerator. "We are running in circles. I was reading through a file earlier. You can reference it if you want. It's called beyondthecircle.pdf. And it got me thinking about how we get trapped in these exact loops. Let's try something different tonight. A different kind of meditation." Leo rubbed his temples, the weight of the day pressing down on him. He was tired of the fighting, but he was even more terrified of the silence. "What kind of meditation?" "It's called shadow work," Eleanor suggested, her eyes pleading for him to meet her gaze. The concept is about looking directly at the parts of ourselves we actively keep hidden in the dark, the unconscious bag of rules, traumas, and expectations we drag around and follow without even knowing why. If we don't look at them, they run our lives, and we call it fate. Or, in our case, we call it an argument. Leo looked at her, skeptical but entirely desperate for a breakthrough. The hostility in his chest gave way to a fragile curiosity. He nodded slowly, leaned his head back against the cushion, and closed his eyes, letting the ambient traffic noise outside the window fade into the background. "Okay," he muttered. "I'm listening." "Imagine a box," Elena said, her voice dropping into a steady, rhythmic, hypnotic cadence. "A massive, heavy wooden box sitting on the floor between us. The word family is carved deeply into the lid. But this time, Leo, I don't want you to look at the good things. Don't look at the holiday dinners, the warm memories, or the photos on the mantle. Look into the shadows of that box. Look at the heavy, unwritten expectations and the silent debts you carry inside. What are the rigid rules you are absolutely terrified to break? Take a deep breath and look into the dark." Leo took a slow, shaky breath, letting himself sink deep into his own mental landscape. As he visualized the box, a wave of familiar anxiety tightened in his chest, pulling him into his psychological shadow. "In the shadows of my box," Leo began, his voice tight, stripped of all defensive posture, "I see the debt of guilt. It's an incredibly heavy weight. It tells me that my life is not entirely my own. It whispers that if I don't sacrifice my own happiness, my own career goals, and my own desires to appease my parents, then I am fundamentally a bad son and a selfish person." Right next to it, I see the fear of distance. He paused, swallowing hard as a specific memory flashed behind his eyelids. I remember the speeches my dad used to give at the dinner table, Leo continued, his voice dropping an octave. He'd say, "A family stays together. If you choose to live across the country, you're turning your back on the people who built you." The shadow reinforces that speech every single day. It tells me that if I move away with you, I am abandoning the people who kept me safe. It's a toxic rule that dictates you are only worthy of love as long as you stay close and do what the collective group needs. Leo opened his eyes, the gravity of the realization hitting him like a physical blow. He looked at Elena, his expression raw. "I realize now why I've been so angry at you. Your freedom, your ease with independence. It makes me feel incredibly guilty about my own chains. I've been punishing you because I don't know how to free myself." The confession hung in the quiet room, thick and heavy. Eleanor didn't look away. Instead, a tear slipped down her cheek as she absorbed his words. The atmosphere shifted from combat to confession. Now, it was her turn. Eleanor closed her eyes, her posture softening as she voluntarily walked into her own internal darkness. "In my shadow," Eleanor said softly, a distinct tremor of vulnerability in her tone, "I see the fear of being controlled. My box has a deeply embedded, fiercely guarded rule that commands, if you let anyone get too close, if you fully commit, they will swallow your identity whole." My childhood house was a place where individual identity went to die. Everyone had to think the same, act the same, and feel the same. Because I am so utterly terrified of being trapped or erased again, I reflexively push you away the second things feel real. Whenever you talk about we instead of me, my survival instincts scream. She opened her eyes, looking directly into his. My shadow constantly convinces me that family is a dangerous place where you lose your soul. Leo, I haven't just been fighting your parents' expectations because they are overbearing. I've been fighting them because I am absolutely terrified that if I accept your family, I will become entirely lost in them. Confronting the unconscious bag, they sat completely still in the profound, dim light of their shared shadows, the last remnants of twilight officially fading from the living room. For the first time in what felt like years, they weren't screaming over top of one another, weaponizing past mistakes, or retreating into defensive, icy silence. They were actively looking at the massive, invisible, unconscious bag they had both been dragging blindly across the threshold of their shared life. Leo finally understood the true anatomy of their endless arguments. His shadow was entirely rooted in guilt. Her shadow was entirely rooted in fear. They realized that whenever they used the word family, they weren't actually communicating about connection, holidays, or love. They were unintentionally triggering these hidden defensive tripwires. Leo was desperately looking for security from Eleanor to soothe his deep-seated guilt, hoping her compliance would make his parents happy. Eleanor, conversely, was fiercely fighting for independence to soothe her fear, viewing any compromise as an existential threat to her freedom. "We've been looking for answers in the wrong places," Leo said, a profound sense of clarity washing over him. "We've been expecting family to magically fix these shadows for us. or blaming each other for triggering the wounds we brought into this room ourselves. By doing this agonizingly honest shadow work, the very air in the living room began to transform. The suffocating toxic tension dissipated, replaced by a raw, fragile transparency. They stopped blaming each other for failing to fit into their hidden, idealized boxes. Instead, they began to talk about the specific shadows themselves, stripping them of their automated power. They realized that by bringing these hidden rules into the light of conscious awareness, they could finally choose which items to keep and which ones to leave behind forever on the floor. They weren't just a default family bound by old ancestral conditioning anymore. They were two distinct individuals choosing to build something entirely new without the invisible weight of old shadows holding them back. Repacking the box. The room felt significantly lighter, though the stark honesty of their discovery left a lingering, tender ache in their chests. Leo looked down at the imaginary box sitting on the rug between them, then looked back up at Elena's tired, beautiful face. "Now that we've seen the shadows," he said, wrestling with the practical, messy reality of their lives, "what do we actually do with the box? We can't just throw it away entirely and pretend we don't have pasts. My parents are still going to call next Sunday expecting things, and your deeply ingrained need for personal space isn't going to magically vanish overnight." Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes tracing the intricate patterns on the rug. The meditation teacher says that once a shadow is brought into the light, it loses its automated power to control you from the dark. It can't run the script anymore. We don't throw the box away, Leo. We repack it. Right then and there, they decided to go through their family box, one item at a time, treating it like a deliberate, conscious inventory rather than an inherited set of life sentences. "I'm keeping support during adversity," Leo said firmly, his eyes locking onto hers with absolute certainty. "I want to know that if the world burns down, if things get hard, we have each other's backs unconditionally. But I am permanently throwing out the requirement of proximity. I want to live near you because I love you and choose you, not because I'm terrified of being labeled a bad son if I happen to live 2 states away." Elena nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek as her hand reached out, her fingers tightly intertwining with his. "And I'm keeping equal consideration," Eleanor whispered. "I want us to genuinely care about how our individual choices affect each other's hearts. But I am taking out the fear of belonging. I'm finally realizing that being part of us doesn't mean I disappear into a monolith. It just means I have a partner who helps me carry my own wings rather than clipping them." As they spoke these boundaries aloud, the memory of those echoing family speeches from Leo's parents started to sound radically different in their minds. Instead of hearing an ominous, unyielding command to obey or face exile, they began to hear it for what it truly was: a group of flawed, vulnerable, aging human beings expressing their own frantic shadows, their own deep-seated fears of being lonely, forgotten, or left behind in the dark. Leo realized he had been looking for a sense of family to fix his internal fear of being not enough. Eleanor realized she had been looking for an external sense of family that gave her permission to be entirely herself, when in reality, she was the only one who could grant that permission to herself. "It's not a destination," Eleanor whispered, leaning her head gently against his shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest. "Family isn't a stagnant place we arrive at where everything is suddenly perfect and resolved. It's a conscious choice we make every single morning about which items we're going to pack for the day." They stood up together, the heavy, invisible, unconscious bag finally sitting completely empty on the floor beside them. They didn't have all the logistical answers for the upcoming holidays, the next big career move, or the inevitable family phone calls, but they were no longer walking blindly in the dark. They had successfully turned a vague, heavy, and terrifying word into a specific, shared language. For the first time in their relationship, they weren't just a family by tradition or obligation. They were a family by deliberate design.